All right, welcome Prospect Live viewers. We have a brand new series we're going to be rolling out all the way up until the draft. These are team by team breakdowns. Joining me today to cover the Seattle Mariners is our own Joe Doyle. He also works for Lookout Landing, so he's got a ton of insight into Seattle, the organization, as well as the system. Joe, welcome. Let's
Thank you,
dive in a
sir.
little bit with Seattle. Of course, this is the illustrious Jerry DiPoto's creation. Over the last couple of years, he's added a lot of talent to this organization through trades, of course, but certainly through the draft. Last 3 first-round picks, just sort of going through here. 2019, George Kirby out of Elon at 20, Logan Gilbert out of Stetson at 14, couple of college arms there, and they went back to the college, I guess not started this trend in 2017 with Evan White, and actually even before that, Kyle Lewis. So he's very college heavy in terms of what they target in the first round. Let's sort of pull up some information here on Seattle. Talk to me a little bit about, some of their history, and then let's dive into, potentially who some targets are for the Mariners.
Yeah, so like you said, they have definitely gone college heavy over the last 4 years, and I think part of that has to do with Seattle's state of play during that time. Seattle, when Jerry DiPoto was brought on, they were in a make the playoffs or bust. I mean, that was it. Make the playoffs. They brought in Nelson Cruz. They brought in players that were all for the short term. And what they did was they sacrificed their farm system because of that. And so bringing in these advanced, polished college players were in effect going to help immediately with that push for the playoffs. I think at this point that has ended. Seattle's now in full rebuild mode. I think they're at a point where they're probably still a couple of years away from making the playoffs, and because of that, they're in a much better position, especially with the 6th pick in the draft, to target the best player on the board, regardless of an ETA. In the past, one thing that they've really struggled with over the last few years is they've gone so pitcher heavy in the draft, which is good because, as you see, I mean, they've got Kirby, they've got Gilbert, they've got a lot of guys that are on the precipice of making the big leagues, but it's been at the expense of position players. During the DiPoto era, they've only taken 5 middle infielders in the top 10 rounds in 41 picks in the first 4 years. So, and 3 of those were underslots in Matt Sanders and Mike Salvatore. So the system is in desperate need of help up the middle on the dirt. And I think that's something that they're going to have to try and address in this draft.
All right. So I was going to say, a handful of guys that you think potentially could go to Seattle at 6. Who's the main target? Do you think it's Nick Gonzalez? Are they sort of hoping that, Gonzo is available at that pick?
Yeah, I think Seattle's in an interesting situation with a top 5 that has seemingly been etched in stone for a long time. I think Seattle would be happy with any of those top 5 players dropping, but Gonzalez seems to stick out as one that just hits every checkbox. I mean, if they're pushing to make the playoffs in 2022, for example, that's when Gonzalez is most likely going to be ready to contribute. He plays an up the middle position. They don't have much depth at all at the second base position. So he really fits nicely, and he's still darn close to being, if not the best player on the board at 6, he's awfully close. So I think Gonzalez probably makes the most sense as far as picking the best player on the board and also filling a need. And Seattle needs to check both boxes for sure.
Is that sort of the dream scenario, in your opinion, as I guess somewhat of a Seattle fan, of course?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of fatigue in Seattle with college pitchers in the draft, and that's not to say that they have been poor selections. I think by all accounts, George Kirby and Logan Gilbert have exceeded expectations, being mid-teen to the 20th pick in the draft. So those have been good selections, but I think the fan base is definitely thirsting for a position player that they can get behind. And because of that, I think Nick Gonzalez fits that bill. Zach Veen, just because of the hype that is around his name, I think makes a lot of sense for the team. They're already pretty chock full of outfielders. It's probably, if not the best outfield farm system in the country. It's close. So Veen doesn't make as much sense, even though the ceiling might be higher. So because of that, I think those two players are probably going to be the best fit, either Veen or Gonzalez from a fan point of view.
Last question here. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Do you feel with their second round selections or later in the draft, is it going to be college heavy still, particularly on the hitter side, or do you see them going after some prep players?
Yeah, no. I think every inclination that I've got in speaking with people connected to the situation is Seattle has 6 picks in this draft. They have a monster bonus pool. I think it's the 4th or 5th biggest bonus pool in this year's draft. I would be stunned if they didn't walk away from the 43rd pick or the 64th pick, the second round in the comp round B. I would be stunned if they didn't walk away with a high upside prep position player at one of those 2 picks. They're probably going to splurge a little bit for that selection. And my guess would be they probably have their eyes again on the dirt. I think the dream situation would be Jordan Walker falling to 43. I don't see that happening, but I think that's probably the dream situation. Elsewhere, you're going to be looking at guys like a Kobe Mayo. You're going to be looking at guys like a Caden Wallace, guys that can play on the dirt, guys that can fill out that infield farm system, and that just generally have higher upside than some of the players that are currently in the system.
Makes a lot of sense. That's spicy. I appreciate that. There you have it. Seattle Mariners. Thank you very much, Joe. We're back up next with the San Diego Padres. Thanks for joining us.